I first came to know Dr. Pattillo sometime in the 1990s, and he was vice president for university affairs and was well established by the time I came along.
I met Dr. Pattillo when he offered me the job of assistant athletic director to Jim Hess, and we met at some little grocery store out on the Loop.
Dr. Pattillo hired me in February of 1981 to replace a lady that I graduated from high school with.
So the first time I met Baker was actually at a Regents orientation meeting that they have for all the incoming regents. So I'd never met the president of the university at that point.
Baker and I just seemed to hit it off from the very start and got along really well, and away we went. And we had a lot of the same interests, and so we just became really good friends.
Well, when I went on the Board of Regents in 1969, Baker was already employed at SFA. Baker and I continued to work closely together on for the next 50 years.
I met Dr. Pattillo before I was appointed regent at Stephen F. Austin, but I really got to know him and his family, when I was a regent.
When I started working here at SFA in 1981, I began to work with Dr. Pattillo occasionally on different events, because part of my job was to help organize and produce events on campus. I began to know him that way, and for some reason we began to really hit it off.
I first met Dr. Pattillo when I was appointed to the Board of Regents in 2007. He had just previously been appointed as president in the meeting just before then. So we both started our roles at SFA at about the same time, and we both served for 12 years, so I got to know Dr. Pattillo really well.
I was impressed with Baker. Baker was my choice, and Baker was a little young to be a vice president, and I was a little young too, but I chose Baker. And it was one of the best choices that I made as president. He was a colleague to me, was a friend, was a compatriot for 14 years while I was president.
I think Dr. Pattillo obviously deserves to be a part of the SFA Hall of Fame, because I'm not sure anybody can really think or talk about the history of SFA without including some mention of Baker Pattillo.
There is nobody else that needs a Hall of Fame award. I mean, if there's any kind of hierarchy, he needs to be at the top of that pyramid.
And there is no one more deserving to be in the Hall of Fame than Dr. Baker Pattillo.
There were two things I always said that Baker loved. Number one was his family. Number two was SFA, and it was sometimes hard to tell the difference.
Dr. Pattillo's great love was Janice and Paige, but SFA was, their lives were just intertwined. He loved the students. He was a student here for, many years, and of course, 65, 66 graduated. He loved the faculty and staff, but the students were his thing.
Baker was for everything that was good for Stephen F. Austin, and he just loved it and cared for it and did it over and over again.
I have never seen a leader more dedicated to their job and their institution than Baker was to SFA.
He wanted everybody, every student that came through the doors here, to fulfill their goals.
Baker was always where he could visit with people. On Friday night, it was going to be at Casa Tomas, and he had the Baker booth there, and people could come up and visit with him. He would always order the same meal every Friday night.
He was, in my mind, for many, many years, the face of Stephen F. Austin.
Baker and his wife Janice have an unparalleled combined service to Stephen F. Austin of approximately 100 years.
And he was just exceptionally involved in Stephen F. Austin, not just an administrator, but really a significant part of Stephen F. Austin, I think.
And so I think that authenticity that Baker brought was his secret. And I think we were all able to galvanize around that commonality and make good public policy and move the university forward.
One of Baker's primary goals was for SFA to have an enrollment of over 13,000. and he was able to meet this in 2018.
He fulfilled his goal.
So I was in a rare position to know Baker as he developed from a Dean of Student Services to Vice President of Student Affairs.
And I think that's what made us so close, because of my total respect for him. My love and respect for that man is unmeasurable.
You cannot have SFA without Baker Pattillo, and Baker Pattillo is SFA.
He is Mr. SFA, and I've known a lot of lumberjacks, but nobody on the planet is a bigger lumberjack or a bigger SFA than Baker Pattillo.
His love and his life was Stephen F. Austin, and it was just so great to have had him, and it was a fantastic honor to know that he was my dear friend.
He's a fixture at this university, so I can't think of a better person to be included in the Hall of Fame than Baker Pattillo.
He had the most difficult jobs. I trusted him totally and completely, and we always had the best relationship possible. And I know that he richly deserves the honor that he's about to receive posthumously.
To my Pattillo family, as you very well know, Dr. Pattillo deserves this award. Axum Jacks.
My heart goes out to obviously Paige and the Pattillo family. I mean, gosh, y'all have such a great legend to keep up with and follow along. And all I'd like to say is, in the words of Baker Pattillo, absolutely Axum Jacks.
As I've said earlier, my love and respect for him is immeasurable. Janice, Paige, Todd, and little Jackson, I held him the day he was born. So he's kind of special to my heart as well.
The Pattillo family is really special to Nacogdoches and Stephen F. Austin. And it applies all the way from Janice to Todd and Paige and Jackson. And I don't know how a town could be so fortunate and a university could be so lucky to have had the Pattillos come their way.
Congratulations and every good wish to Baker's family and friends.
He could not have done this without all of you being fully supportive and encouraging to him. So congratulations to each of you.
I know Baker would love this moment, and I also know that he would be the first to say that he couldn't have done it without your full consent and support. So thank you for giving us, Baker, the years that you did and for all he did for SFA. Your family will always be a part of the history of SFA and the legacy that Baker left. Thank you.
Janice, Paige, Todd, Jackson, just want to tell you how honored I am to be part of this induction of Baker into the SFA Hall of Fame. He certainly made a huge difference in my life and a huge difference in the lives of hundreds and thousands of students and faculty and staff at the university over more than half a century. Can't think of a better person to be part of the SFA Hall of Fame than Baker Pattillo. Congratulations and Axum.
I want to congratulate Janice and Paige on this high honor given to Baker. He richly deserves it, and I'm delighted to be coming into this honor at the same time as my friend, colleague, man whom I miss very much, Baker Pattillo.
Paige Pattillo Brown, please come forward and accept this award on behalf of the Baker Pattillo family.
Well, it's not too bad for a preacher's kid from Arp, Texas. God was with Dad throughout his entire life. There's certain moments, I think, that we can see it very clearly that there was a godsend moment for Baker Pattillo. One of the first would be when Ralph Steen was his graduation speaker at his high school graduation. And Steen and Dad formed a friendship that night. Steen encouraged him to work at SFA. He encouraged him to work on his doctorate. And you know where he did that? He did it in a dusty closet on the 3rd floor of the Austin building. That room later on would become the president's office. Now that's a God moment. It was also a godsend when he met my mom in church, in youth group. And they were junior high sweethearts and did absolutely everything together. And it is amazing what that man accomplished and what they lived through. He loved the crazy times in the 70s with the marches and the protests and the crazy panty raids outside of Steen Towers. And I heard about those as a child. He loved, just like Mayor said, bringing concerts, Garth Brooks, George Strait, Pearl Jam, things of that nature to campus because he wanted students to have the very best experience. He loved academics. He loved bringing in presidents. We've had both President Bushes, Carter, and Clinton on our campus because he wanted us to have that experience. He raised millions and millions of dollars for this campus and changed the face of the campus. 55 years of service. He did it all with my mom. But at the same time that he was accomplishing these amazing things for our university and our town, at home, he was the very best dad to me. I was talking with Mr. Perkins earlier tonight, and he was talking about my twirling championships. And a lot of you know I did win several regional, state, national, and international championships. But when I think of those moments, it's not the trophies I remember. It's my dad. He went to every practice. He would stay up with me till midnight or 1 in the morning just because I wanted to have another practice. When I was at nationals, those arenas were filled with thousands of people. And I would look up and I would take a moment and I would see thousands of women there to celebrate their daughters. And my mom was always there and made every costume I ever performed in. But I could look up and I could count on one hand how many men were there to support their daughters. And my dad was always there. Always. And he loved it. And he did it while doing all of this. He was exceptional. And he just loved everybody. Except for one. And that would be Todd Brown. Because Baker Pattillo was smart and Baker Pattillo was observant. And he knew that Todd Brown was different. And Dad worried that Todd would take me away. But that did not happen. Instead, Todd came into our family and their relationship grew. And Todd was the son that Baker Pattillo never knew he wanted. They did not have an in-law relationship. And that was beautiful to watch. And you know when guys really like each other, it's because they insult each other. And they would give barbs, and they'd go back and forth, and you'd see other people like appalled, like Todd said something ugly to Baker, but Todd could get away with it because Todd gave Baker his one and only grandson, Jackson Baker Brown. Jackson, buddy, he loved you so much, and he was so proud of you. And 5 years was not enough with Papa Bake. But that's the thing about the man. There is no amount of time that would ever be enough with him. He was that good. I could go around this whole room tonight and tell all of you have had an impact on him in some way, and I don't have time to do that. So I want to talk to the people who made this beautiful presentation for my dad. John Branch, your loyalty is unparalleled. Steve Westbrook, he wanted you to be the 9th. Steve McCarty, you were his brother from another mother. Man, he loved you. Susan, who came into my life when I was 4 years old and was my second mother. Man, he loved that you would tell it like it was. And those of you that had to talk to Dad had to get past Susan. She was an ultimate guardian. To the regents that served with my dad, he loved you. He loved your families, all of you. Joe Max Green and Jane, Bob and Debbie Garrett, Jim and Margaret Perkins, Pam and Scott Coleman. Bob and Debbie Garrett, he adored every moment with y'all. You made his life, you made his presidency easy because you loved SFA as much as he did. Dr. Johnson, it is an absolute honor to be in your presence tonight. I grew up hearing all about you and what a chance you took on my father. He was young, he was in his 20s, he was too young. There were people so senior to him. What in the world were you thinking? But you know what, you were right. He loved it. He loved SFA till his absolute dying breath. And I'll tell you, I often wonder and think about what heaven is for Dad. And I think it's something similar to this. I think it's a room full of people wearing purple who love SFA. And I think of it in the sense of the Archie McDonald speaker series. And I imagine a stage, and I imagine Archie himself talking to the SFA greats. He would talk to Boynton and Birdwell and Steen about the early days of SFA and what they wanted and how the Nacogdoches community rallied to get SFA here and what they thought the future would hold. Bob Murphy and Ab Abernathy would be there too, and they would interview Tom and Peggy Wright, and they would talk about the war years at SFA and how that group of students was molded together like none other before because they lived through the war together. Dina Coven would talk about her famous Kilgore Rangerettes and how it all ultimately started at SFA. Gwen and Ed Cole would talk about all the students they adopted over the years and how full of love they were for all of those kids. Over in the corner, there would be Homer Bryce, because the Angels would never give that man a microphone. Because if you knew Homer, you knew he was a gambler. And Homer has to be betting on who will be next through the pearly gates. And then there would be Dad. And he would have that grin on his face and that chuckle and that smile in his eyes. And he would talk about how he loved it all. The academics, the athletics, the Jim Hess years, the Gary Blair years, all of it. He loved every single second. And he would tell you this, that he didn't want to go home that soon. He wanted to be here to celebrate 100 years. He had talked about it often, and he wanted to retire on September 19th. But God had another plan. To Erica and the Alumni Association Board, thank you for making his wish come true. Sam and the videographers, for what you put together, this beautiful tribute to my dad. Thank you. Craig Turnage, Derek Snyder, my sweet, wonderful friends Thank you so much for including him in the 100-year history of SFA. Thank you. Dad, we are so proud of you, and we miss you terribly. You are a champion. I think from time to time he gets to look down on us, and I think he would love this moment to have a room full of purple SFA pride. So I'd like to end the way Baker Pattillo ended every speech he ever gave. So if you would, say it with me. Axum Jacks!